Your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I love your definition of this, which is branding is what does the selling when you're not in the room. And I couldn't agree more. It's confusing because people define the term in all different ways. When I'm approaching it as a strategist, whether I'm working with people or I'm working with companies, I always like to think of this as really just achieving consistency between what makes you great in real life and how that's presented or experienced online. That's it. I'm trying to think, okay, what makes my new friend John really awesome and personable and charismatic? He's got a great voice for a podcast.
Recording? That's right.
How do I take all the things that make the brand great in real life and ensure that that comes across online in 3 seconds or less? That's typically what I've focused on for the last decade and a half as a brand strategist.
This episode is packed with game-changing strategies for every entrepreneur. Listen up, folks. Get ready to learn from a branding powerhouse who's transformed hundreds of businesses across 23 different countries. Phil Pallen has built brands for sharks on Shark Tank, politicians, and entertainment's biggest names. As the author of AI for Small Business and creator of Brand Masters, he's spoken on 5 continents and collaborated with Adobe, currently a client, on groundbreaking AI initiatives. With insights featured on CNN, Access Hollywood, and Adweek, Phil brings a motivational burst of energy that will challenge you to elevate your brand and leverage AI like never before. Welcome to the show, Phil.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, we're excited to have you on, man. Branding. Branding is selling without selling. And the Sales Machine podcast is all about helping people really serve others by selling as a service. But branding helps people sell without selling. You don't question Apple when you buy an iPhone.
I think it was Jeff Bezos who said, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I love your definition of this, which is, kind of branding is what does the selling when you're not in the room. And I couldn't agree more. It's confusing because people define the term in all different ways. When I'm approaching it as a strategist, whether I'm working with people or I'm working with companies, I always like to think of this as really just achieving consistency between what makes you great in real life and how that's presented or experienced online. That's it. I'm trying to think, okay, what makes my new friend John really awesome and personable and charismatic? He's got a great voice for a podcast. How do I take all the things that make the brand great in real life and ensure that that comes across online in 3 seconds or less? That's typically what I've focused on for the last decade and a half as a brand strategist.
Yeah, I love it. And you work with, sharks on Shark Tank and big companies, and you're doing a lot of content. And, we talked about it early on in the show, but how did you get involved in this space? Like what ignited your fire? Because you're extremely passionate about what you do. Where did it all begin?
Yeah, I'll tell the short version, and I'll tell the best parts of it. How about that? So, grew up in Canada. Yeah, grew up in Canada. Actually worked as a TV host when I was young. So early teens, I hosted a reality show in Canada where teachers and students swapped roles, and I was the vice president. And I realized, wow, this is awesome. I love media. But Canada, for me, it was like, I think I don't want to stay here. I want to go somewhere where there's even more opportunity. So moved to the US. So I went to a school called Full Sail University and graduated 2011, figured out that branding, sales was one of the courses that I did. And I liked it. Branding was one of those courses I did where I'm like, wow, I love this so much. I would do this as a hobby. And that kind of prepared me to pursue a job in this kind of arena. Applied at a bunch of jobs, moved out to LA, and actually didn't go and work for someone else. I started my own business I entered a competition at this time when applying for lots of jobs. I entered a competition to become Charlie Sheen's social media intern at the peak of his craziness in the media, the tiger blood stuff. And long story short, I made it from 90,000 to the top 50 of this competition, built a social media campaign to become his intern, got lots of traction, didn't win the internship, but started my own business, consulting and helping people and companies, mostly small businesses, position, build, and promote their brand. And speaking of promoting a brand, making sense of social media. That was really in its infancy in 2011. Jump forward to now. AI kind of feels like that new thing that everyone is trying to figure out. I love technology. I love, what's current and what's coming. My job has changed drastically in the last few years, where now my fun job, which was content creation on the side of helping clients, has become my primary job. 80% of my business now is creating content, and 20% only of my business is client work. And so I keep just a handful of clients that I really enjoy helping. They keep me in the trenches on the work. And now so much of what I do today is make videos and teach people how to do cool stuff with all of this.
Yeah, I love it. And you've transitioned from doing the personal branding even to business brands, like working with Adobe. How was that transition? And was it a natural thing, or was it something that you had to change certain tactics or certain strategies to actually elevate a brand without a face? Because we have faces, right? And we can get personable. When you're talking about Adobe, there's no face for that.
Right. It's more challenging. Yeah. In fact, one would argue that the role in the contracts that I win in the work that I do with Adobe is humanizing the brand in lots of ways. So that's just the thing, John, is that even though it's, person or company different, but for me, the process is still the same. I think if anything, when you're working with a company, there's even more pressure for you to humanize the brand. I was just giggling to myself before we came onto this podcast, looking at Wendy's social media accounts, Wendy's, the restaurant in the US, and maybe they have locations abroad. It is hilarious. Ryanair is another fun one, the airline that everyone loves to hate, but also loves on social media. Like, some of these brands have done really daring things with the content that they create. Humanizing, that's all it is, and you have to nowadays, you must be human, personable on social media, or people just won't notice you, especially in an age of like AI generated copy, M dashes and buzzwords. Now it's just interesting. It's kind of like, how do I prove that the content I'm creating is made by a human? It's just, it's a very interesting time right now.
Super interesting. And, speaking to that, there used to be a great Head and Shoulders commercial, way before the internet. We're talking when I grew up, like 1940s. And I just look young. No, there used to be a great commercial, and that commercial was by Head and Shoulders. And the tagline was, "You never get a second chance to make a first impression."
I love it.
In just a quick jingle, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And I never forgot that. And that's now kind of like what's happening with social media, because there's so many different platforms, from TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Facebook was like a slower platform you could read through. And then they started Reels after they bought Instagram, right? And Instagram is like scrolling. And now you got TikTok. It's even faster. So how long? I mean, you've got to have a great hook. You've got to have a great catch. You've got to have some action. What are the key elements to actually posting that get people to not just stop, but interact?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, it's the interaction that really is the key to building the brand?
Absolutely. First piece of advice I would give you or give anyone, even though you feel the pressure to be on all of these social media platforms, you don't need to be. And in fact, you shouldn't be, unless you're Gary Vaynerchuk and you've got a whole team following you around that produces that content. It's not realistic for you as a person or even as a small company to be everywhere. And I think as you put effort into being everywhere, you focus on the wrong things. It really becomes impossible to be excellent at one thing, which I think is key to success on social media now. I used to say, instead of being average on 10 platforms, be a rock star on 3. Now I'd say be a superstar on 1. That's not to say you might not post on some of these other social platforms. You will, but it's not expected that you are a superstar on all these social media platforms, unless, of course, that is your business. Even then, I'll be active on LinkedIn and Instagram, but my priority platform for my business is YouTube. And that's what I have to focus on because I only have so many hours in the day. And I'm at peace with that. And I think most people need to be kind of at peace with the fact that they can't be everywhere. So when people say, well, what social media platform should I be on for my business? Maybe 5 years ago, I'd hear your niche or your business and say, well, maybe think about this one. Now, I don't prescribe to that at all. Whatever social media platform you open when you're in line at the grocery store is the platform that you should be creating on. If it's a platform that brings you joy, that you enjoy consuming, we then need to transition from consumer hat to marketer hat and think, that post from John made me stop and think about this thing, or I commented, I reacted, I shared it. That's the best metric if you want greater visibility. If that was my reaction, I can't just consume. I need to notice and have a little light bulb in my head that goes off and goes, not only did I save this, share it, reply on it, but why did I do that? What was the kind of the art and the science that made me do that? And how can I learn from that as I go to create my own content? Would be my advice.
I like that. And I'm also taken aback by that. And not to create controversy, but like as a form of demographics in a space like the sales machine. The sales machine we're a software company that helps companies increase their sales through automation and elimination of nonsense admin for sales, marketers, and customer success. And then we reduce their cost with all of the automation, and obviously now with AI, we have it doing things like taking notes, evaluating the sales call, evaluating the tonality, evaluating overall the performance of each individual, and then the best practices of a group of individuals so that we can issue training in the same software to actually elevate the people that need to learn the best practices to do better, driving performance, increasing sales. So to me, it's just common sense. But most people that have never elevated and empowered a sales team or created one, they find it to be, revolutionary. And at the same time, if I jump on like the podcast, I'm comfortable in my own skin, so I don't care about posting or whatever, but I don't do a lot of scrolling, or my team fulfills for me, right? Because I just show up and do what's necessary because I train my people. I built the software and I've worked in, 7 countries and several other countries, like building tens of thousands of people to do sales and manage sales teams. And so if I want to get my message out, and this is for my listeners too, because it's a B2B crowd, right? In essence, my listeners, the demographic of my listeners and or the people that I want to make the biggest difference in their lives and in their organizations would be over 40 at least. And they have, manufacturing, distribution companies with field sales reps or field modern trade agents that go and fill the stocks on shelves in stores or in construction supply something like that. So would that still fit into the box as an example of your philosophy of where to be? Because a lot of the demographics of the users on TikTok are different than Instagram. And this is like the evolution of not just brands, but the evolution of generations and demographics, where so most older people originate with Facebook, they stayed on Facebook. And then the new generation, it's like, that's mom and dad stuff. We're on Instagram. Right. And now it's TikTok. And time is ticking.
Yeah. I mean, I would say you can have success on any of those platforms independent of your own demographics. We see, I follow a grandma on TikTok who's in her early 90s. I've worked with finalists from MasterChef Junior. Just that, I think we used to be more guided by those traditional demographics years ago, and now we see so many instances of success that don't follow those conventional rules. In my experience, particularly working with CEOs, celebrities, public figures, they have the most success on social media, and we would need to define what success means. Is it sales? Is it conversion? Is it growth of audience, impressions, reach? It's generally a combination of those things. When I see people have success on social media, they're generally involved in the creation of their own social media. So that's why I give that advice. Think about where you enjoy creating or what you enjoy creating, John. So for example, I don't like TikTok. I log onto that platform and I find it stressful. I open it probably once a month at most. It is not a platform that I jive with. I go on there, I consume content. There's some interesting stuff, but I generally like higher production value. I like more produced content. I go on there and I think, God, this is probably the kind of content I should be creating, and I'm not creating it. So it creates stress for me. I don't create on TikTok. I have brands that ask me all the time, will you post this on TikTok? I'm like, I can, but it's not a priority for me. My priority is YouTube, where I can educate in a longer form of content. I love doing podcasts and stuff like this because we actually get to have a conversation, connect, talk about examples. That's more my speed. And so I guess kind of rounding off that advice for all the different types of people that might be listening to this, notice the types of content you like creating. Even when I think about when I did my master's degree, I listened to the courses that I really enjoyed creating and then was able to create a business out of that. I think it's super cool that you've created a software from the work that you've done for years training sales teams. And by the way, I'm always a super big fan of niche or specialized software that can deliver on like one thing, that one lane. Of course, I'm sure it touches on all kinds of other things, but like a focus on sales, I think is really important for the people who need it. And so a lot of my favorite AI tools are industry specific, or they're specific to one aspect of business. And I think generally there's tons of opportunity for people to kind of build their arsenal of tools that help them in those specific areas of need.
Thanks for the clarity, because like I spend most of my time on YouTube when I want to know something, when I want to validate something, verify something, whether it's in my own space, which is sales enablement. And we're, like you said, you worked with MasterChef Junior. I love that, because when I was a junior, I grew up, my first job, I was a dishwasher, and it wasn't a choice, like consciously. I applied to be a busboy, but I had acne. So they're like, we love your attitude, definitely can help us, but you got to be back of the house, not front of the house. Because, I had pimples everywhere. So the guy without the pimples, he got the job being the busboy. But it's okay. I bought some skincare and eventually became a busboy. But I also appreciated the front of the house, helping and serving customers. And, I knocked on doors as a young boy, running a paper route. I needed to make money to buy my own school clothes. So, I wanted my own clothes, not my brother's hand-me-downs. So I've just been in sales since I was a young boy. And to me, sales is a service. And we focus on front of the house for companies and clients. We don't do financial software. We don't do ERP, enterprise level logistics and procurement. We focus on sales, sales as a service and sales enablement, empowering companies. And for me, niching that down, and I'm making it personal because I think this is going to be really great for the listener to understand, even me, and or the sales machine as a company. We need branding, because unseen is unsold. We all know that, but it's a matter of where do you want to be seen as at the same time, right? I don't even use Google anymore. It's so funny because YouTube, I can get the experts in any industry, like how to change a sensor on my Porsche Panamera. Like I can literally go in there and watch somebody change a headlight, somebody change a sensor on a Porsche Panamera. That's specific. And you could do that in almost anything you can think up. And it's live, it's video, it's personable. So for me, I think it's the greatest platform out there. And I love how you're using it. What do you think? And a big learning lesson I got, because I've, learned a lot about branding and personal branding, and then how CEOs have become icons of brands. And to me, that started with Steve Jobs. He did it better than anybody in the world. You can connect the dots between Steve and Apple and Steve. They became one, but he became this legendary maverick that took, and taught everyone to think differently, whether he coined it or not. So I see the power of personal branding and professional branding. How important do you think that is still today? Because even the Sharks, you worked with Sharks. You had the opportunity to work with Charlie Sheen. I met Charlie Sheen when he was that train wreck. And but I did not participate in any extracurricular activity.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Well, I mean, another legend in personal branding would be Richard Branson and Virgin. Amen. I would say, yeah, there's some really incredible examples out there. Some might say Elon Musk and Tesla or SpaceX.
Yeah. I think,
yeah.
Who was the first? It was definitely Steve Jobs and Richard. Yeah. And Richard.
Yeah. And I sometimes think we hear those examples and we think, oh gosh, that could never be me. I mean, maybe not at that scale. It's not impossible, but it's definitely difficult to achieve, but it doesn't need to be at that scale. It's if we think back to the role that this plays in our businesses, so much of this is staying top of mind. Okay. So after this conversation, if you're thinking about branding or you're having a conversation maybe with the next guest on the podcast and branding comes up, you might say something like, I was talking to Phil Pallen about this. That's branding. That is top of mind awareness, which is so integral with sales. And I think it's equally a part of branding. It's kind of how they go hand in hand, but you don't need to be as legendary as some of these worldwide, mavericks, as you call them. I think being top of mind on certain topics, or being that person people call when they need an opinion on, or they need expertise on, turning on this podcast for people to listen to while they're doing something. All of this has a really powerful compounding effect. I think about the interactions that I have with people when I get off stage after a talk. If I've delivered a keynote, I'm sharing information that I'm very familiar with, but as you said earlier, the person, the other person on the receiving end might be thinking it's revolutionary or groundbreaking. And that's really cool. we have the opportunity to have that impact on so many people in our network. And I get excited about that. I think that's really where branding becomes a powerful move for business growth, business building. Yeah, that's the stuff that I get really excited about.
Yeah, and I actually experienced it yesterday. I was with Daikin corporate headquarters, and they have their organization is out of Japan. They provide enterprise level air conditioning and air solutions for hotels, hospitals, even for your home, split type air conditioning, and smart technology that if you're in the room, the aircon comes on. If it's not, after 5 minutes, it detects if you're not. Anyway, I was sitting down with their chief technology officer for us to solve their problems, which, a lot of technology companies in that space manufacture and distribute, high level, enterprise level solutions for big companies or, hospitals, malls, hotels. And he goes, I listened to some of your videos, and that's why I wanted to have a meeting with you about sales enablement. And I'm like, wow, really? Which one? I'm like, I got to be honest with you. That is the power of my team. I jump on with experts all over the world because I want to learn and I want to help everybody I interact with. I want to help because helping is selling. Selling is helping. That's selling is something I do for people. And so I want to give the most value. And this is the purpose of my life. I used to have this long, the definition of my life or the purpose of my life was to love, contribute, lead, and empower myself and others. I had figured it all out. And no, I didn't figure it all out. And that was just a lot to say, but I had ingrained that in me. And that's why I remember it. And now I've just condensed it. So the purpose of my life is to be a blessing to myself and others. And so I do this, and my team does all of this. And at the same time, I don't know, and I bet you most people, I would say 90% of companies and individuals don't know what you know. So both for individuals and for organizations. And that's why, it resonated with me and my team to get you on. So let's talk about the mistakes that people make. So the individual, what's the biggest mistake that you think people make when they want to build their personal brand and what to do to fix it? And we're not talking Charlie Sheen train wrecks. And by the way, even though he wrecked the train, he's still got a pretty powerful brand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say people jump too quickly to the final stage of branding, which I call promotion. So I focus on this in 3 stages as I describe and teach people how to do this, but also serve my clients. I've always grouped it into 3 stages. Position your brand for success, build something to show for it, and then stick a for sale sign up front of the house and take it to market and sell it. Too many people jump to that final stage. They try to sell the house that doesn't have a roof or it doesn't have a strong foundation. And in my experience, a little bit of staging of the house and maybe some updating of what we would call branding or branding assets, identity, photography, website, any of these kind of like softer elements. Small changes can have a big difference on people's first impression, which you only get one shot at, as we talked about. Small changes can have a really big impact on people's experience of your brand. So even though I tackle all 3 things and I talk passionately about social media for business owners and CEOs and companies, I get really excited about the first 2 stages. How do we position your brand for success? How do we satisfy a need like every good business does? Then that second stage is probably my favorite. How do we build something to show for how great we are in real life? Brand photography, a brand identity, logo, color typography, how it exists in web and in print. And then a website, pulling it all together with words that describe who you are and why someone should care, paired with strong visuals. I think right now there's a lot of gimmicky AI generated images and videos. I think some of it's kind of scary with how realistic it looks, but I don't think that it replaces creatives. I don't think, I know it doesn't replace creatives, photographers with a creative point of view, copywriters. Yeah, I think that's being challenged at the moment, but haven't we noticed that everything starts to sound the same unless you're very AI proficient? Everything's starting to sound the same. I saw a meme the other day that was like, or it was a quote, this idea that students are using AI to submit their work, to create their projects, and then professors or instructors are using AI to correct it. It's like this very dangerous ecosystem of sameness. And while I'm a big fan and proponent of AI, I think there's definitely some concerns about this kind of like echo chamber that it's creating. Creativity is still human led, and we still need it, maybe, is the moral of this point.
Amen and amen. Some of it's just downright creepy. And then,
yeah,
some of it's creepy, especially the avatars. And, I can figure out when their mouths aren't moving to the words, or it's just those little physical movements that don't seem natural whatsoever. And it's just creepy. And a lot of the imaging and stuff like that with some of the different platforms, you're like, oh, look, that's fantastic. That's amazing. But that guy's got like 7 fingers.
Yeah. Yeah, fingers were a challenge with the AI models, particularly in the early days. If people want to experiment with AI image generation, I recommend Adobe Firefly. It's the only model that is safe for commercial use. So it means that you can create an image and then post it on your website or post it on your social media platforms. It, by nature, is not going to know about trademarked or copywritten material. So let's say, for example, I wanted to create an image that was Spider-Man sitting in John Rankins' desk promoting the sales machine platform visible on a laptop. Okay, let's say that's our prompt. It's going to be problematic if that image is created in a tool like Midjourney and has Spider-Man or its version of that. I don't think you own that trademark. And so, AI is novel and it's exciting, but we're now kind of entering this phase of responsibility, sustainability. Which tools are going to stick around because they actually make a difference on someone's bottom line versus look how cool this thing is that I made. Also, look at this thing that I made that's now going to get me into legal trouble. These are the things we have to be thinking about: privacy, compliance, security.
Yeah, amen and amen. Not just convincibility, because if you've infringed on, because I trademarked the sales machine globally, like every country. I don't care what it costs. I just said, look, we're trademarking it because I like the name.
Yeah.
I like the name. That's what it was. Hey, and by the way, how's our name? The Sales Machine.
It's great. It's very direct. It's a brand that a lot of people wish they had in the sales space because it embodies what the tool is. So it's good branding. When you can get from a brand name that's 3 words what the literal function is.
Yeah.
Also, the idea of like machine, it's something that's like the super machine or like the sales machine. It has like a colloquial kind of personality to it. So it's a great brand name.
Yeah. And the sales machine is a sales machine for your business, not just for mine, not just the brand. Like, we're a sales enablement platform, right? We are a system for your business to increase sales, drive performance, and reduce your cost. Mm-hmm. So that's our value proposition. And my goal, when someone asks us, what do? We increase your sales, we drive performance, and we reduce your costs. Well, how do you do that? Automation and elimination. We automate all of your process. We eliminate admin, and we empower it with AI. So it's unlike anything you've ever seen before.
Love it.
It's really simple. And they're like, okay, can you show me how to do that? Absolutely. And I can show you, I can literally demonstrate how much more money you can make by increasing the amount of time your people can sell And I can show you how much you're going to save by eliminating encoders, eliminating old labor intensive processes like using Excel. I can eliminate all that to reduce all your costs. So essentially our system pays for itself.
Yeah.
Would you like a system that pays for itself so you can make more money?
I think people are going to want that. Absolutely.
So I got something from you just listening and hearing how you do it on a personal level. It resonates with me doing it on a professional level. And to validate that based on your process, what I should be doing is YouTube videos demonstrating that online with an ROI calculator or a savings calculator for their business, walking them through the process of how we do it with the technology, with the actual platform that, by the way, it's so simple. My 7-year-old can use it.
That's great, though. That's a huge selling point because a lot of people are already overwhelmed or they're stressed out. And I would just add, like for people that are thinking about content creation that promotes their business, always think, what question am I answering on a daily basis? You actually already answered this in the conversations you're having with prospective or current clients, right? The concerns they raise to you. How do I save money? How do I save time? How do I save labor? Those are really think about the types of phrases that people are entering into YouTube, questions that people are asking that they want solutions for. Same as your Porsche Panamera. You've got a question and you want an answer. We need to think about the same thing for our businesses. And when you're just starting out, get even more specific than you might initially think. If it's too broad, it probably won't come up in search engines unless you've got a bit of a brand, subscribers, traction, content. Get really specific is a great way to start building that platform. But in my experience, my most successful videos on YouTube are me answering questions that I was asked on an individual basis from a prospective client, an Instagram follower, something like that. I take screenshots and I inventory those questions to create content from. And typically that's my best performing.
I love that because we could do that for manufacturing distribution companies with. Hey folks, if you're enjoying this episode and you're picking up what I'm putting down and what the guests are actually putting out there, do me a favor, like and comment what you liked about the episode, or even comment what would you like to hear? What topics would you like to hear in the future? Because believe me, it matters. I read absolutely every single one of them, and I want to bring you more and more value to help companies scale so that we can grow this podcast to make a bigger difference. Now let's get back to the show. Field agents, essentially, and how to enhance their performance and empower them with technology to do it. We've done lots of proof of concepts for literally from Big Cola. We don't have to mention names. With Big Cola, with banks. Like I had no idea that banks were using a lot of Excel spreadsheets. They spend a lot of money back of the house systems. They don't spend anything on the salespeople to track, like especially in Southeast Asia. And I'm like, wow. Your people are wasting 3 hours a day times 1,000 agents you have nationwide. And so I can save you minimum 3,000 hours a day times 5 days a week, 15,000 hours. That's 60,000. And now your people get paid how much per hour? And by the way, so we can eliminate all that cost and save you this much money, right, based on their average salary. And on top of that, do you think they're going to sell more or less if I give them 3 more hours in their day to talk to people? It's a no-brainer. Our system pays for itself. I'm going to save you $20 million a year, and the investment's $5 million. Would you trade?
Definitely.
Would you trade $20 million for 5? You still end up with 15, or 5 for 20, right? you still end up with 15. So this is how our solution pays for itself. And by the way, shouldn't technology pay for itself? When you invest in technology, shouldn't it pay for itself? Because ultimately,
that's the point of having it.
That's the point. And most of it, people cannot demonstrate it. So this is great that you, I love what you're saying and how you're saying it. So we've talked about the personal brand. I've cross-pollinated it or connected the dots to how I can use it. I like to cross-pollinate. Essentially, is it the same framework you use? So we know what the biggest mistake, you said the biggest mistake was for personal branding is people try to go to the end, try to sell.
Yeah. Company brands too. Yeah. Too many people are like, oh my gosh, I've got a book that I want to launch, or I've got a product that I want to launch, and they haven't done the work to identify the audience, to position the brand with strength, and to look the part. I think a lot of times, like, take the time to really make sure your visual brand is up to par with what you launch. And I think now every day people are becoming more discerning. You know, you want a brand to give you a feeling of trust. And so you just want to deconstruct that a little bit and make sure that's people's experience of your company.
Yeah, I love that. And so connecting the dots, also bringing it back to its infancy, what's the difference of like building $100,000 brand or $1 million brand, or to simplify it even more, the difference between branding a startup versus a company that's been around for 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, they have some similar or different challenges. Generally, the brands that are bigger have greater reach, or there might be higher stakes in the decisions that you're making. So it's always interesting hearing about these like rebrands. The big one was Cracker Barrel that was in the news over the past few months. Brands that have the potential to reach a lot of people, even what might feel like small decisions, what goes in a logo or what colors get evolved or changed, typography, these types of things. For a startup that doesn't have an existing base or brand, generally it's kind of like, let's make a decision and move on. But for some of these bigger companies, the reason the budget is so much higher on these is there's generally more people making decisions or weighing in on the process, and the stakes are higher. But I was about to say, part of me wonders if some of these very big rebrands, they're designed kind of with the idea almost as like a marketing campaign. The brand changes so much that they know it's going to get a reaction from people, and whether people are saying something good or probably saying something bad about it, it's a lot of built-in publicity as part of that initiative. But that's the critical perspective of having worked.
You know, this brings up something for me. It's hilarious. And I want to talk about that because this is your world, right? This is Phil Pallen's world, and we're just living in it. As far as branding, goes, I mean, you've worked with some of the top companies in the world. Adobe is enormous, right? And so this brings to mind a couple different things, because out of nowhere came Canva, $1 billion company, a young lady who's very talented, very skilled, and knows how to do branding, especially at events and how to gamify events. Out of nowhere. So I want to talk about, how do you come out of nowhere? What did they do to come out of nowhere? Because obviously they followed a formula. And guaranteed, if you helped them do it, Adobe's going to be pissed off at you. Right?
I didn't.
I know.
I didn't.
But you understand what I mean. Number one, I want to talk about that because that's totally interesting and crazy.
Yeah.
And I say, crazy good. And then the opposite side of the coin we'll talk about after is the brand rebuild. Let's talk about some of the companies that got it wrong and just
Yeah.
totally destroyed their brands.
Yeah. So it's very simple. The brands that get it right satisfy a need like every good business does. That could be the coffee shop on the corner that just went up that has a lineup outside the door. That could be a brand like Canva, which kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. Certainly satisfied a need. People working from a browser, designing content for their business without them being graphic designers. Now, do I think Canva is better than Adobe Express? Certainly not. I use Adobe Express day to day. Much prefer it over Canva, but there's no denying Canva was early to the game. Um, there's no denying it, and they've been incredibly successful. And it's people know it when you're first in the room, right? People notice and generally engage and sign up. And then I think the challenge for Canva will be what's next. Now that you've got all these people using the platform, how do you innovate? How do you make sure that not everything you create in Canva looks absolutely the same? I can log on and see templates that I've seen 100 times when I log on Instagram or LinkedIn. So those, I'm sure, are challenges that they're grappling with. The ones that get it wrong, I think in some cases at some of these companies, it's an echo chamber, and maybe it's a situation where they didn't get or collect enough external feedback. Focus groups and things like this exist to be able to provide that. But it's really important that you do market research, and that does not have to be complicated or expensive. By market research, for a startup, I'm saying, or for a company, go and talk to a real person that's not your friend already or related to you. Go stand at a dog park and say, hey, this product, would you use this? Would you buy this? That's what I mean by market research at a very basic level. I always try to like break this down in a way that doesn't overcomplicate it, because I think we have a tendency to do that. We're like, oh my gosh, this is complicated. This feels like running a marathon. I'm like, no, just get to the first mile. Let's focus on mile 1, then 2, then 3. That's my reference because it was just the Chicago Marathon this past weekend. So many of these things feel like a huge ask or a big project. Just focus on that first mile to start.
Amen and amen. And we're going to talk about how important it is to actually have a conversation with the human. Yes, because so many people will do market research and they'll go on Perplexity or ChatGPT and they'll ask for all of this market research data, and they've never had a conversation with an individual in an industry. And the last time I checked, ChatGPT has never disagreed with you. It just tells you what you want to hear. And then it has that ability, like a Vietnam vet literally using LSD for the first time to hallucinate.
Yes. The later models are getting better. 5 is better with the constant agreeing, but I have a prompt that I use all the time, which is be discerning, or agree or disagree. But if you disagree, tell me why. Like, just kind of playing around with the ways in which you can prompt it to make sure that it's not always agreeing. But certainly the later models are getting better, thankfully.
You know, I might be going down a rabbit hole here, but I work with manufacturing, distribution companies, wholesalers, and companies with large sales forces that actually go out in the field. And the last time I checked, AI doesn't go in the field and doesn't stock shelves, doesn't have conversations with managers, store managers, and or even, you know, big firms that are building multi-billion-dollar projects about what can we do to save you money and save you time so you can go to market faster, and or help that guy that's out there in the field to track time in motion and empower him with the resources he needs, whether it's an app. We have field intelligence with an app, and there's no input It's just pushing buttons. You want to add to
Yeah.
cart. You want to place an order. We simplify everything because that guy's time is precious. And he
Yes.
doesn't need to be doing admin. He needs to just be fulfilling, solving a problem for the client. So when we do it, we literally go in the field with our clients in their industry and figure out what are the biggest problems and how to save them time. And so although I'm a fan of AI and my team uses it a lot, I truly don't. And for me, even in our platform, I don't want to see AI. I don't want to have to interact with AI. That should be automatic. As a sales leader, as a sales person, helping solve a bigger problem, all that AI is working in the background to give me data and or an
Yeah.
analysis. An agent is giving me an analysis of what's going on with the actual leading indicators, whether it's a sales generating activity that's giving me a lagging indicator, which is the result of that conversation or the conversion of a sale and what went right and what went wrong. And I want a summary of that right now, but I don't ever need to interact with the AI. It needs to do its job and go do it for me as a sales leader so I can manage 1,000 salespeople with the same effort as managing one person. That's how I see AI.
Yeah.
How do you see it now and utilize it, and how can companies use it? Because it is very use case oriented. Like my people are all enamored since November 2022. ChatGPT came out. There's a million courses out there on the internet. Everybody's an expert, and no one is even a journeyman. And AI has been around for 100 years. There's models out there that just weren't automated to the point of ChatGPT, and now that they are, people are just jumping on a bandwagon, and a lot of it is
Yes.
false prophets, and or they're selling you a course and saying certain enablement factors work when they don't. They don't,
Yeah.
and they
Or
can't.
people saying you're too late. You're too late. It's too late. Buy my course.
You're too
I always
late, and
say,
it's an infant.
yeah, I know a lot of people that are very successful without social media, and I know a lot of people that are very successful without AI. As business owners, we need to be laser focused on what matters and what moves the needle in our business. And that's it. And so I always try to self audit or teach clients to do this. What are the things in my business that uh, indicate high impact? Things that I do that are high impact in my business. That could be sales conversations, partnerships, brand partnerships. I need to make time for the areas where I make the highest impact in my business. I also need to make time for the things that bring me joy. And I'll give an example. I probably should have delegated creation of my YouTube graphics in my YouTube videos. I really enjoy making them, and I do it alongside making my videos. I export those graphics, give them to my editor. He'll put it all together. But I really enjoy it. So I make time to do it because it brings me joy. It's something that I enjoy. The admin stuff, not a big fan of it. And so I'm always thinking, how can I automate and or delegate this to someone on my team? Generally not a good spreadsheet person. I don't touch spreadsheets, but I will have sales calls because that's where I'm strong. Right. And so it's just kind of, how do we model our business or adjust things so that you're focused on areas of high impact, joy, and then delegate or automating the other things, which it sounds like this is exactly what your software does for people. And so I'm a fan.
Yeah, and so I have a friend or a colleague or somebody I know. His name's Joe Polish. He created the Genius Network. There's a plug for you, Joe, in the United States. I used to be a part of a war room, a mastermind that was a empowering people in the online world, the software world, or there's a plug too, guys, to actually scale and trailblaze businesses using social media and technology. And, he calls it ELF. If it's not an ELF business, he wants nothing to do with it, which is easy, lucrative, and fun. So that,
Mm-hmm.
that, so that sounds like what you're saying. What gives me the greatest joy in my life is being a dad, being a daddy. I'm hanging
Yeah.
out with my son. He's cool. He's 7. And right now he's playing the guitar at 7. We're in Southeast Asia and he's learning Chris Stapleton songs. He's 7 singing and playing Tennessee whiskey. And, I just, I don't know what's going to make me laugh more and or enjoy it more. And he'll sing Broken Halos as well. Just amazing. But for my business, like you, as far as spreadsheets and stuff like that, that's kryptonite for me. And
Yeah.
operations and handling logistics, that's absolute kryptonite. Yet you throw me in an environment to solve a problem in sales and efficiency, and I'm just a kid in a candy store. I send in my business development managers and account executives to figure out what are the biggest problems that these companies have, and then they can do discovery. And then once it's to a stage where they know and they can demonstrate to me, you need to demonstrate to me what can we do for this company that's going to that's going to save them money, increase their sales, and we can demonstrate to them how it can pay for itself. Now you can bring me in. And then,
Yeah.
most of the time I'm on a whiteboard. We can open the software and we can look at it, but let me put the psychology to it, a methodology to it, and then we'll show you the technology. Make sense?
That makes
Because
sense. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I like it.
that's how we transform your organization. That's how we take you to the next level, right? Not just giving you a tool to make, as a lever. A lever is good, but we want to give you leverage with every aspect of your
Mm-hmm.
business. How are you using AI with leverage? Because I know Adobe's doing with Fireflies, right? But how are you using it as leverage? And how would you suggest companies use it as the biggest lever and leverage to help them grow their brand?
Sure. So the impressive thing about AI is the speed at which it can compute a lot of information. So from my perspective as a brand strategist, I'm focused not on how I use this tool as a shortcut or as a form of laziness, to get a job done, but I'm thinking more about how can this tool help me be even more excellent at my job. And I'll give an example. If I'm working with you on a branding project, let's say we work together 3 or 4 months, I now have the technology to transcribe, take notes of every single interaction that you and I have. I can then store all of those transcriptions in some kind of format. There's multiple ways to do this. It could be as simple as a PDF that stays on the desktop of your computer where you have all of the transcripts of all of our interactions. I can now use that as a resource to basically reflect on everything that we've talked about. So let's say I'm working on the about page copy for your website, okay? Reflect on the conversations that I've had with John to really demonstrate his integrity. Let's interweave a story of a client anecdote or an instance where he had proven sales success. Okay, that's like just an example. What this does is it eliminates me having to remember or memorize. And in the moment, now that I'm leaning on this technology as a tool, I can just operate. I can just extract. I can juice the lemons to get the lemonade I need to be able to do a great job of this. And I think that's an example of how I'm using this technology to be even better at my job and in my work. It's created all kinds of efficiencies, not just saving time and money, but it's also made me better by having that kind of expansive memory and computing speed.
Yeah, I like it. And what I'm doing now, and you can give me a checkup from the neck up. I'm always willing to learn. Literally, when we go in and work with companies, one of the first things I say is, just out of curiosity, why did you want to have this meeting? What challenges or problems are you trying to solve? Number one. And number two, have you established best practices in your business? And if you have, how? So did you use ChatGPT or Perplexity to establish what are the best practices in your industry, in your business, in your niche? Because potentially it could have gotten it wrong. What are the best practices that are working for your top 10% in your industry in-house? And have you extracted those? And if you haven't, how powerful do you think it would be that we can extract the best practices of your top 10 to 20%, and then the other 80%, we train them on those best practices, and we raise the waterline of every salesperson in your business? Because it's my understanding that most people are not idiots. And it's my understanding that the education system there's, as much as there's failing students, the real failure is the teachers. Not bad student, bad teacher. Because we have an incredible ability to learn when people can demonstrate to us. Like my older brother, academically, hopeless. Academically, when somebody goes to the front of the room, he learns through feeling, he learns through touching. That's his kinesthetics, right? And sight. But if a teacher goes to the front of the room and starts writing all these different things on the board and asks them to memorize, hopeless. Now, I have the ability academically to do both. I learned with my hands. I learned working in a shop with my grandfather, and academically things were just easy. No homework. I just do it in class, and fuck that. I go home and enjoy my day, right? While everybody else is doing whatever they're doing, their homework, right? So that's how I like to extract best practices, and that's my psychology of doing it. Have you established the best practices of how you do branding and what companies can do? And ultimately, how do they work with you to do it for them? Because let's face it, I like to just hire experts and not do the things that I don't like to do. Put me in, coach. I'll go and I'll figure out the problems and the best practices and stuff like that. But I don't want to do operations. I am not interested. I'm not going to build out spreadsheets. If you asked me to build out an Excel spreadsheet, I would be lost. Absolutely lost. But I built a multi-million-dollar software that automates everything for people in front of the house.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool to be able to focus on one particular thing. In your case, sales, and mine, branding. I sometimes say that we're like training wheels. So we're there to work with you over the course of several months. But in my business, I say this, and I think I do have a few clients that have kept me around for a few years, but I don't assume that a client's going to keep me around forever. In my business, I like to work on a lot of different industries and a lot of projects. I find that exciting. And I'll work, I love to talk, but really my job is to listen. It's to take inventory of the things that you're describing in the work that I'm doing. It's also funny when people say, are you an expert in branding for luxury, hospitality, or whatever their industry is? I go, no, you are. You're the expert. My job is to create that first impression, which is your brand. But I shouldn't be the expert in your authority. That's you. My job is to help craft the first impression. I think I'm actually better at my job when I know less about you, and I've got that natural curiosity throughout the process to really hopefully have some influence on that first impression that people get.
And then you can identify what are the levers that's going to create the most impact for that business's branding. I absolutely love this.
Have to. Yeah, have to.
Yeah. So a final question is, how do companies leverage AI with an expert like yourself to get it right the first time? And or can you just expect that we're not going to get it right the first time unless we use a focus group, people and AI and an expert? Because there's, just like a cell, there's a proton and a neutron, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting point within the question. I think, in my experience, most people and companies learn by doing. And so you've got to create a little bit of space for yourself to have that playground or that experiment to figure out what works. That being said, there are always constraints like time and money. It's a great idea to keep people that you know, like, and trust in your court to help make these decisions, whether that's an expert, whether that's someone you subscribe to on YouTube to get updates and to get recommendations. I know a lot about AI tools because I've been making videos about them for 4 years. I don't know everything about it, and I don't claim to know everything, but I can generally give you a good recommendation based on my experience. And it adds up. 2 to 3 videos a week for the last 4 years is a lot of videos, 408 to be exact. I know because I'm working on the next one. Same for software. I think it's a great idea that you have selected a lane, sales. Here's what we do and what we know. Let us help you. And so I think, when we reflect on the most successful people, many that we've talked about in this conversation, they're people that delegate, that trust the team, that don't micromanage, and that have a clear vision for growth and what's next. Sales is a huge part of that. So is branding. And I think that would be my advice. There's so much to know and learn about AI that probably the most trusted way is to have those people around you that you know, like, and trust, and ask for help as you navigate what those solutions are, if it's something you're trying to, save time and save money.
I love it. Amen and amen. So how can people reach out? Ladies and gentlemen, you need to reach out if you want to build a brand. And, if it's good enough for Adobe, for your organization, it's probably good enough for you. And Phil, how do people connect with you? And are you actively, because I know you limit the amount of clients you work with. You said earlier offline, I think, that you do not want to work with more than 30 or 40 clients a year. Are you actively taking clients now? And if you are, how can people work with you outside of your YouTube?
Always creating content that hopefully is helpful for people that need it. And I do all different types of stuff. So some creators will only make videos about tools and platforms that they use within their own business. I'm not that guy. I like to try a lot of different things and make recommendations for even industries beyond what I do, because I know there's someone out there that will find it useful. So I tackle a lot of different types of things. Within my own business for branding, I'm always happy to have a conversation with someone that's identified a need for that, whether I'm able to help them in the capacity of consulting. I do a mandatory session called a brand audit consultation, which is always the first step in working together. It's kind of like when you go to the mechanic. I'm not going to make updates to the car until I diagnose what the situation is. Same with a brand. I'm not going to design your logo, advise you on brand photography until I fully understand your business and your goals. Much like you said earlier when you have that sales conversation. Before we even get into it, what is the goal? That's the question I'll answer, or I'll ask you. And if you don't have an answer, we work through it together. So I do that session. Majority of clients will go on to hire me to help them build and promote their brands. But many go, you know what? That exercise is exactly what I needed for clarity. I've got people I can plug into that process. All of that information is available on my website, which is philpallen.co. Plus, I've got a resource on there where I keep my recommended marketing, social media, and AI tools there that you can sort them by category and check them out. I've got a running list of over 100 tools on there that I've used, I've tried, and I recommend for all different aspects of business.
You're amazing. Thanks for being on the show, ladies and gentlemen. Phil Pallen.
Thanks so much for having me, John. It's been a pleasure.
That's a wrap, folks. Thanks for joining me today. And if you got value from this episode, do me a favor, like, subscribe, and refer a friend. And if you want even more value, go to thesalesmachine.com, click on resources, and there's tons of resources there to increase profits and drive performance in your business. Right on, come on.